are here at Open Soul Sessions, and this is the open book segment. I'm here with a writer and radical intellectual, Shahid Stover, and he's going to talk to us about his book, Hip Hop, Intellectual Resistance. But before you get into your reading, I want to ask you, because I know that you really get into a hip hop aesthetic when you approach all of these, deep issues, for lack of a better term. But do you really think that by doing that, you're making these radical ideas, these analyses more palatable for this hip hop generation as it's described? Because a lot of people have tried to join, analytical thought with the culture of hip hop, and it hasn't really been successful. What's unique about the way you do it?
Well, what's unique about the way I do it, you can even tell by the way I hold the mic. I don't really go into hip hop from a position from an academic standpoint. In a sense of, to me, it's a lived experience. I came up eMCeeing, battling, so I know what I'm talking about. I'm not coming at it like, what are these Negroes doing in the ghetto? That's just a whole different perspective when you approach hip hop as a subject of academia as opposed to hip hop as lived experience. So what I talk about, instead of trying to fuse ideas that don't even have anything to do with it, you can look at hip hop inherently as a form of transcendence for oppressed social communities. You know what I'm saying? There's an inherent, and you can start from Melly Mel, and when he dropped the message. At that point, it was no longer about party music. It evolved, and it no longer became how are we going to survive these hard times? But wait a minute, why are we going through these hard times? And it was just a slight shift. But what it did is open a door for a whole form of critique where you can use these aesthetics, and I get into that in the book, and then just launch into like a more radical critique of society. Because honestly, what the people, if you want to use a Fanonist term or a Black Panther term, the lumpen proletariat, which is the community, the people in the streets, from where hip hop originated, they need more than just a critique of the best MC. They need a critique of what's going on in society that they can help get out of these conditions as well.
So, but if you look at what hip hop has become today, and I think most people, well, maybe most people won't, but it's sad. There's not a lot of analysis of any political issues at all, in any deep way when you're talking about mainstream hip hop. But conceivably, this is a culture that everybody wants to draw from. People have had hip hop political parties. Yeah. They've had hip hop ministers who try to reach people. And I'm just saying, is there really a possibility for us to be able to reach young people in a way that doesn't, they're already turned off from going to meetings, they're turned off from politics, period, they're turned off, a lot of them, from going to school. Is there a formula that we can use to try to reach people and turn them into the kinds of analytical and thinking people that's going to be required to really fuel any movement?
Well, I think that's the role of each MC, in a sense of, it's the MC that really functions as the hip hop intellectual. I mean, I talk about it, I actually define the term, because you're right, a lot of people tossing around, hip hop intellectual this, hip hop culture that, and it can be exploited. I mean, we have to face it, we're living in an advanced capitalist society, hence, they always need new forms of cultural commodities to exploit. And if we allow ourselves to be that, we'll be just that. But what I talk about, there's something that's intrinsic about hip hop, which can kind of get past that. And it doesn't mean that it can't happen, but it's just in a sense of, there's a confrontation that takes place within hip-hop culture itself, when you look at the aesthetics of rhyme and just even the battle. I mean, I'll just use an example, for instance, and just to use an example of Nas. You could say he's a mainstream MC. He actually, after 2001, after 9/11, he released an album called Stillmatic, and this was in November, 2 months after 9/11. Right. Most people check the album, Ether was on there. He just bodied Jay-Z. That's established, it's all good. But there were other tracks on the album where he was addressing things like, he actually had this line, George Bush killer till George Bush kills me. Mm-hmm. And this was like 2 months after 9/11 when everybody was shook. No one wanted to challenge authority. Everybody was brown-nosing the establishment. Right. And so what spirit was Nas in tune with, and who was he speaking for when he wrote these lyrics? You know what I'm saying? And another song on there, we talked about, my country shitted on me. She wants to get rid of me for the things I've seen. And so I'm not saying that everyone has to be Chuck D 100% of the time, but what I'm saying is, don't forget your role and your relationship with the community that gave you birth.
Well, having said All right, enough with the talking. Let's hear from hip hop intellectual resistance, A. Shahid Stover.
Hey, can we?